The clock read 2:48 when the first anomaly appeared. Not a detonation, not a radar spike, not even a warning tone. Just a hole, a sudden, precise absence of sound, cut into the ocean's background noise like someone had erased a line from reality. On the acoustic display aboard the destroyer USS Spruance, the junior operator froze for 3 seconds, then leaned closer, because what he was seeing didn't look like a submarine. It looked like geometry. 6 discrete pockets of near silence, spaced with intention, forming a shallow crescent across the carrier strike group's projected track, southeast of the formation, where the shipping lanes were loud enough to hide almost anything, but not quiet enough to hide a pattern. He didn't whisper, "Contact." He didn't say, "Possible sub." He said the only thing that made sense: multiple. And then, as the system continued to integrate returns, the truth came into focus with the kind of clarity that makes your stomach drop. Not 1 submarine, 6. Iran had never attempted a synchronized heavy submarine encirclement like this in real operational conditions. Not openly, not at this scale, not with this level of timing. The plan wasn't subtle, but it didn't need to be, because it wasn't built on stealth alone. It was built on math. Carrier anti-submarine defense assumes the undersea threat arrives from a limited number of bearings. The screen, destroyers, helicopters, patrol aircraft, can cover a lot of water, but it can't be everywhere at once, unless it's already there. Somewhere inside Iran's naval command chain, someone had decided this was the moment to spend everything they'd built, every trained crew, every maintained hull, every torpedo that still passed quality checks. A decision made from desperation dressed as strategy, and it would cost them an entire generation of undersea capability. The carrier at the center of the formation was USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, CVN-69. A nuclear-powered airfield at sea, a moving capital ship, and the reason the Gulf never truly sleeps. The ship doesn't panic, it doesn't flinch. Its flight deck is a factory line, and its combat systems are built around one idea: time is life. A Nimitz-class carrier displaces over 100,000 tons and operates as the core of a strike group designed to fight through layered threats: air, surface, and undersea. Iran's planners understood something real. The undersea domain is the one place where even a superpower can be made to hesitate, because you can't see the threat, only infer it. And the platform they chose wasn't symbolic, it was practical. Kilo-class submarines, diesel-electric boats with a long-earned reputation for being extremely difficult to detect when operated well. They're widely associated with low acoustic signatures and noise reduction features, including hull treatments frequently described as anechoic tiling. In NATO circles, they've been called black holes, because in the right water conditions, you don't find them by hearing the sub, you find them by noticing what's missing. Iran's concept was brutally simple. Use commercial traffic as cover, exploit thermal layers, approach on electric drive, and complete a 6-bearing encirclement fast enough that the strike group's reaction time collapses under simultaneous demand. 6 boats, 6 firing solutions, 1 carrier, a saturation problem. But the strike group wasn't improvising. It had been waiting. 3 days earlier, P-8A Poseidon aircraft had been running extended maritime patrol lines, laying down search patterns and deploying sonobuoys along likely transit routes. Work that looks boring until it suddenly becomes the difference between control and catastrophe. The P-8 is specifically built for maritime patrol and anti-submarine warfare tasks, including deploying and monitoring sonobuoys. Signals intelligence had flagged unusual movement out of Iran's submarine infrastructure days before. Communications patterns that weren't definitive, but they were wrong enough to matter. And in naval warfare, wrong enough is actionable. So the strike group did what modern ASW doctrine demands. It pre-shaped the battle space, not by firing, by listening. When the acoustic anomaly appeared at 2:48, it didn't create the crisis, it merely confirmed it. At 2:51, the tactical action officer received the consolidated undersea picture. 6 contacts, each separated by bearing, each running quiet, each positioned to build a firing envelope as the carrier pushed northeast. The encirclement wasn't complete, but it was close enough that waiting would be suicidal. The Tau issued one order: flat, immediate, non-negotiable. Launch the Romeos. Now. On the carrier and on the escorts, the response happened with the efficiency of a team that has done this in training until it became muscle memory. MH-60R Seahawks, the U.S. Navy's primary shipborne ASW helicopter lifted into the dark in a rolling sequence, spreading outward in pre-assigned sectors. Their defining tool wasn't a missile, it was a sensor. The AN/AQS-22 Airborne Low Frequency Sonar, ALFS, a dipping sonar system designed to detect, localize, and classify submarines. Dipping sonar is slow by nature. Hover, lower the transducer, listen, move, repeat. Against one submarine, that's manageable. Against 6, spread across dozens of miles, it becomes a coordination problem more than a detection problem. So the helicopters didn't hunt alone. They hunted as a network. Short burst encrypted transmissions, sector handoffs, overlapping dip patterns. They built a composite track picture no single aircraft could see. By 3:17, the strike group had done the thing Iran's doctrine needed to prevent. It had localized the threat. Not perfectly, not with cinematic certainty, but with enough accuracy that probable positions became weapon-grade solutions. And Iran's crews still didn't know, because from their perspective, their plan was working. The surface was noisy. The thermal layers were favorable. The carrier was big, loud, predictable. And then, at 3:31, Iran executed the point of no return. Tube doors cycled, flooding transients appeared, and across multiple bearings, within roughly the same minute, 6 submarines launched their weapons. 12 heavy torpedoes entered the water in a compressed window designed to overwhelm reaction time and force the strike group into defensive maneuvers that would break the carrier's rhythm. A carrier that turns hard bleeds air operations. A carrier that slows loses timing. Iran wasn't trying to sink a carrier in the Hollywood sense. They were trying to force the carrier to stop being a carrier, to hesitate, to maneuver, to give the region a single headline that changes diplomatic gravity. But the U.S. Navy doesn't wait for headlines, it waits for authorization. And in this scenario, authorization had already been pre-delegated under standing self-defense rules, because when torpedoes are in the water, permission delayed is a ship lost. The MH-60R didn't ask, they executed. The response weapon was the Mk-54 lightweight torpedo, a standard U.S. anti-submarine weapon deployed by aircraft and ships. 2 helicopters prosecuted the closest contact first, because geometry has a center of gravity, and so do ambushes. The first Mk-54 entered the water not where the submarine had been, where it had to be. Seconds later, a second weapon splashed with offset spacing, because modern ASW doesn't bet on a single perfect shot. It bets on probabilities stacked until the opponent runs out of outcomes. Below the surface, an Iranian captain realized too late that the quiet ocean wasn't quiet, it was managed. Active low-frequency energy in the water, sonobuoy fields feeding track updates, multiple helicopters forcing movement. He attempted a desperate maneuver, an emergency change in depth, a course break, a last attempt to use the thermal boundary like a wall. The Mark 54 didn't care, it adjusted. A detonation shockwave rolled through the water column. One contact disappeared from the plot, replaced by debris, bubbles, and the sudden absence of machinery harmonics. Submarine 1 was gone. A second Iranian boat tried a different gamble. Rise shallower, sprint briefly, then settle again, counting on clutter and confusion to mask the move. It half-worked. The engagement didn't end in a clean kill. It ended in something often worse for a submarine crew: mission death. The boat took damage, lost sensor function, lost control authority, and was forced into a survival decision that breaks the purpose of a submarine: surfacing. A submarine on the surface in the carrier's battle space isn't a predator, it's a signal flare. The moment it broached, the strike group's surface and air layers could treat it as a fully visible threat, and it ceased to matter in undersea terms. 2 submarines, neutralized fast. And then Iran's remaining 4 boats learned the real problem with synchronized saturation. If the first wave fails to disrupt the defender's response becomes compounding. Every second after detection makes the hunter stronger. The helicopters already had dip positions. They already had track continuity. They already had firing logic. Iran's remaining boats attempted to reposition, but repositioning burns the very thing they relied on: silence. By 3:40, the battle space belonged to the strike group. Not because the ocean got simpler, because the strike group had mapped it in advance. One by one, the remaining contacts were engaged, not with drama, with procedure. Weapon in the water, track update, terminal homing, end of contact. And then, the final insult to Iran's concept arrived. Not from explosions, but from emptiness. The heavy torpedoes Iran launched, built for the signature of a massive nuclear carrier, entered an acoustic environment saturated by active and passive deception, layered sensors, and noise shaping. They did not achieve what they were designed to achieve. They ran, they searched, they failed to discriminate, and one by one, they went quiet. 12 torpedoes, spent. The carrier never deviated. Speed steady, course steady. Flight deck cycling as if the undersea fight was just another line item. By 4:09, the undersea engagement was effectively concluded. A brief status report reached the bridge, acknowledged, and the ship returned to the only thing that matters in carrier operations, the next launch cycle. The strategic meaning wasn't subtle. Iran had committed the heart of its heavy undersea force, 6 boats in one synchronized attempt, to force a carrier strike group into reactive paralysis. Instead, it confirmed the opposite, that modern ASW isn't a scramble, it's an architecture. The assets that matter most often fired first days earlier, through positioning, through patterning, through intelligence integration. The weapons were just the closing argument. And when you look at the cost ledger without emotion, the imbalance is brutal. Iran side, years of maintenance cycles, trained crews, torpedo inventory, institutional knowledge that takes decades to build and cannot be regenerated on command. The strike group side, a finite number of lightweight torpedoes and flight hours. Expensive, yes, but replaceable within the scale of a superpower's logistics machine. More importantly, the strike group gained something that doesn't show up on public order of battle charts. A live data set, coordination behavior, timing profiles, acoustic signatures, and decision patterns under terminal pressure. The kind of information that makes the next engagement shorter and quieter. Iran's doctrine was built on the belief that the Gulf's complexity, thermal layers, dense shipping, shallow water acoustics, could neutralize carrier power by creating uncertainty. What this scenario demonstrates is that complexity is not a shield, not when the other side has already turned the environment into a weapon. Because the side that arrives first, listens first, maps first, doesn't experience complexity as friction. It experiences complexity as control. Iran came looking for a carrier. It found a battle space built around it. And in the end, the most telling detail wasn't the detonations. It was the carrier's behavior. It never changed. Because from the moment the first anomaly appeared at 2:48, the strike group wasn't reacting to a surprise. It was executing a plan that had already been written quietly days earlier. They came with 6 submarines. The carrier never deviated.